Fasting, confession, and a sweeping remembrance of Israel's history fill Nehemiah chapter 9, as the people look honestly at both God's faithfulness and their repeated rebellion. After hearing and understanding the law in the previous chapter, the Israelites gather again in Jerusalem, this time not for celebration, but to acknowledge where generations of disobedience have led them. On the 24th day of the same month, the Israelites assembled together, fasting and wearing sackcloth with dust on their heads. Those of Israelite descent separated themselves from foreigners. They stood and confessed their sins and the sins of their ancestors. For a quarter of the day, they listened as the book of the law of the Lord their God was read. For another quarter they confessed and worshipped the Lord. Levites, including Jeshua, Bani, Kadmiel, Shebaniah, Bunni, Sherebiah, and others, stood on the stairs and cried out to God. Then the Levites called the people to stand and praise the Lord, who is from everlasting to everlasting. What follows is one of the Bible's great prayers of remembrance. The prayer begins not with Israel's failures, but with God. He alone is the Lord. He made the heavens, the earth, the seas, and everything in them, and the heavenly host worships him. Then the prayer moves to Abraham. God chose Abram, brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans, and renamed him Abraham. Finding his heart faithful, God made a covenant to give his descendants the land of the Canaanites and surrounding peoples, and God kept his promise. The prayer then remembers Egypt. God saw the suffering of Israel's ancestors and heard their cry at the Red Sea. He performed signs and wonders against Pharaoh and his officials, divided the sea so Israel could cross on dry ground, and overwhelmed their pursuers in the waters. In the wilderness, God guided his people with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. At Mount Sinai, he gave them laws, commands, and the Sabbath. When they were hungry, he provided bread from heaven. When they were thirsty, he brought water from the rock. Yet Israel became proud and stubborn. They refused to listen and forgot the wonders God had performed. They even made a golden calf and declared that it was the God that had brought them out of Egypt. Still, God did not abandon them. He remained gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love. The cloud and fire continued guiding them. His Spirit instructed them. Manna continued to feed them, and water continued to satisfy their thirst. For 40 years God sustained Israel in the wilderness. Their clothes did not wear out, and their feet did not swell. Eventually, God gave them kingdoms and nations. They entered the land promised to their ancestors, captured fortified cities and inherited houses, wells, vineyards, olive groves, and fruit trees. They ate and were satisfied. But prosperity did not produce lasting faithfulness. The people became disobedient again. They rejected God's law and killed prophets who warned them to return, so God allowed enemies to oppress them. When suffering caused Israel to cry out, God heard from heaven, and because of his great compassion, repeatedly provided deliverers who rescued them. But once they found relief, they returned to wrongdoing. The cycle happened again and again. God patiently warned them through his Spirit and prophets, yet they refused to listen. Eventually, he handed them over to surrounding nations. Even then, he did not completely destroy or abandon them. The prayer reaches the people's present situation. God had been righteous in everything that happened to Israel. He had acted faithfully, they had acted wickedly. Their kings, leaders, priests, and ancestors had failed to obey God's law despite the blessings he had given them. Now, although they were living again in the land promised to their ancestors, they remained servants under foreign rule. The land's abundant produce went to the kings placed over them because of their sins, and those rulers had authority over their bodies and livestock. "We are in great distress," the people confessed. Their prayer ends with a decision. Because of everything that had happened, the community was making a binding agreement in writing. Their leaders, Levites and priests, would place their seals upon it. Nehemiah 9 looks across centuries of Israel's history and reveals a striking contrast. The people repeatedly changed. God's character did not. Israel wandered, rebelled, forgot, returned, and wandered again. Yet throughout the prayer, God is remembered as faithful, patient, compassionate, and willing to hear when his people cried out. That gives this chapter a deeply practical message. Looking honestly at our past should help us recognize patterns, not simply leave us trapped in regret. The Israelites remembered their history so they could understand how they had arrived at their present situation and choose a different direction. Reflection becomes useful when it leads to change. The confession has now been made, and the people are ready to put their commitment into writing. In Nehemiah chapter 10, leaders, priests, and Levites will seal the agreement, while the community makes specific commitments concerning God's law, marriage, the Sabbath, offerings, and the support of the temple.